Long ago in the Holy Land there resided 12 tribes of Jews, all claiming descent from the patriarch Jacob, known by the blessed name of Israel, the son of Isaac and grandson of Abraham. These 12 tribes would eventually come together as the Kingdom of Israel, under the leadership of the legendary kings Saul, David, and Solomon. However, the tribes would soon split again over a dynastic inheritance dispute, with the northern 10 tribes breaking away to form their own Kingdom of Samaria, leaving the 2 tribes of the Kingdom of Judah in the south. To the horror of all Israelites, this breakaway kingdom would fall traumatically when the Neo-Assyrian Empire invaded in 740 BC. Over the next 20 years, the cities of Samaria were destroyed, as was the holiest site in Judaism, the first temple of Jerusalem. Treasured relics such as the Ark of the Covenant were lost, and the peoples were forced to resettle in the hearts of Assyrian land, subsequently being absorbed into the Assyrian identity. The Kingdom of Judah in the south would survive for another couple centuries, and any Jewish survivors from Samaria fled there, but most did not make it back to the Holy Land. While knowledge of their original tribes was present early on, eventually even these survivors would lose their tribal identities, this time to their southern saviors. Just like that, 10 tribes of ancient Jews who could trace their lineage back to Noah were wiped out of recorded history. For the next 2,000 years, a search to find these 10 lost tribes of Israel would endure, with explorers making widely ranging claims, from the Native Americans being candidates to even the Japanese, but little is compelling outside of the Jewish communities found within the areas of Afghanistan and India. But that's not to say that the lost tribes of Israel will never be found outside of the Middle East. Perhaps those early explorers were simply looking on the wrong continent. By the borders of South Africa and Zimbabwe resides a Bantu tribe of around 70,000 members. They have lived here for thousands of years, speak the same language as their neighbors, and look the same too. And yet this tribe is completely unique in one aspect: religion. These are the Lemba people, the isolated community of Jewish Africans, and they live over 5,000 miles south of the Holy Land, having only recently come into sparse contact with the greater Jewish community. How did they get here? When? From where? What is their story? Could the Lemba tribe truly be one of the lost tribes of Israel? Let's take a look. Let's begin this investigation by examining the most important claim. Are the Lemba actually Jewish? To confirm this, we can simply look at their current customs and beliefs and compare with traditional Jewish ones. Here are some aspects of the Lemba's culture. They worship one god, Nawali, the creator of all things, and claim to be his chosen people. They observe Shabbat, Saturday being a day of rest. They rest on days with the new moon, similar to Shabbat. They do not eat pork or other animals forbidden by the Torah. They practice ritual slaughter of animals and meat preparation in traditional Middle Eastern styles rather than African styles. They practice male circumcision. In the past, they carried a holy relic into battle. And, of course, their oral tradition claims that they are of Jewish heritage. These are some fairly compelling similarities. The observation of kosher rituals is specifically impressive considering they only have an oral history, not a written copy of the Torah, and yet they kept these same rituals all the same. Whoever the Lemba's ancestors were, they were clearly not from the local African area, and they were also clearly fervent in their beliefs, so much so that the importance of these spiritual rituals were never lost. Considering how accurate these customs have stayed, confidence in the rest of their oral history being well preserved and truthful increases. So what is their story? What do they believe about their Judaic origin? I'll tell ya. According to the Lemba oral tradition, their ancestors were Jews of the priest caste who left Judea 2,500 years ago and settled in Yemen, creating a new city called Senna by the Indian Ocean's coastline. Eventually, conditions in Yemen changed for the worse, and a group of men decided to set sail to northeastern Africa. After arriving in Ethiopia and intermarrying with the locals, the immigrants split up, with one group staying in the area while the other group traveled further south into modern-day Tanzania and founded another city, simply titled Senna II. The original Senna had become a key part of the exiles' mythos. A constant desire to return to their home one day led to a veneration of the name, and thus the founding of a new city in its likeness. This group remained and prospered for a while, even as some left for Kenya and Malawi, but eventually Senna II was abandoned for unknown reasons, and the tribe traveled even further south to Mozambique, where they established the creatively named Senna III. After many years, a part of the tribe moved south again to settle Tirama, today known as Zimbabwe. Here they take credit for the construction of Great Zimbabwe. It's said that it was here in Zimbabwe that the Lemba became known as master jewelers and became involved with the precious metals trade. In spite of this success, a portion of the tribe ventured further south still into South Africa, and that is where the Lemba finally remained. At least, the group that we have had contact with. It's a plausible enough origin story, if seemingly far-fetched, but importantly, this is a story that has enough details that we can actually examine it further. This story gives us claims of where they came from, where they first arrived, a number of cities, and their ethnic roots, all of which should have hard evidence to back them up or deny them. Let's begin with the physical evidence. At the beginning of their story, they claim to have lived in and departed from a city in Yemen named Senna. And surprisingly, that ancient city does exist, known by the same exact name and not buried in rubble or lost to time. While it is not a coastal city, it was linked to a port nearby, and it gives a huge amount of credibility to the Lemba story. We know right away that the oldest section of their mythos is rooted in reality. Their venerated city did exist. Yemen also historically had a large Jewish population up until only the modern era. It's entirely within the realm of possibility that the Lemba's ancestors truly did hail from this city as Jews. What is harder to get any facts on are the subsequent Sennas created in Africa. So far, there is no confirmed archaeological evidence for Senna II or Senna III yet, at least not any ruins linked to the Lemba in particular. On the other hand, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe do exist, and some experts believe that the Lemba may have helped to construct it. But a number of other local clans also take credit for its construction, and there is no way to determine who is telling the truth. Well, if the ruins are a dead end, how about the holy relic carried into battle, the Ngoma Lungundu? Their tradition claims it is the original Ark of the Covenant, and considering the Lemba's priestly origins, it's a possibility they would have watched over it. But the carbon dating of their Ngoma Lungundu shows it's only around 700 years old, hardly old enough to be the biblical Ark. There's also no Ten Commandments found within it. However, there is a chance that this is still an accurate reproduction or repair job of the Ark. Consider the Ship of Theseus thought experiment. If one were simply to replace only the damaged or rotten sections of the Ark as needed, over time it would still keep its form, even as its materials became newer. Eventually, none of the original material made to build it would still be there, but the form remains the same as ever, and thus we could still consider it an accurate and original Ark. Obviously, this is all conjecture, and there's absolutely no way to definitively prove this. As is, I would simply note this as another interesting parallel of culture, rather than to take their claim of origin at face value. That is not to say that the trail runs cold here, however, far from it. The true sign of a link between the Lemba and the Jews doesn't come from any ruins or relics or writings. It comes from the blood. To take you back to middle school science class for a second, the X and Y chromosomes are the two sex chromosomes in humans, and form in pairs to determine sex, XX being female and XY being male. This means that the Y chromosome can only be passed from father to son, unlike the X chromosome, which is found in both males and females. The Y chromosome is also one of the fastest evolving points of the human genetic system, meaning it varies relatively quickly between generations. All of this makes the Y chromosome a great place to look in the DNA backgrounds of men to see up their family line. In 1996, 49 Lemba men undertook a Y-DNA genetic survey, the very first done on their tribe. The results were immediately stunning. Over 50% of the male Lemba had Y chromosomes that are similar to Semitic populations from the Middle East, and much more concentrated than anything you might see in their local neighbors' genetics. This was finally proof that the Lemba came from the Middle East, but it wasn't conclusive. There are many Semitic peoples in the Middle East, and this survey suggested an equally likely Arabic origin just as well as a Jewish one. Clearly, more testing was required. As I've mentioned before, the Lemba have always claimed to descend from the priest caste, and that caste has a name: Cohen. Traditionally descended from Aaron, the brother of Moses, the main branch of the Cohenim have survived into the modern day and have a distinct Y chromosome titled the Cohen Model Haplotype, or CMH for short, estimated to have first appeared between 2600 and 3200 BC. While the CMH is certainly not required to be Jewish, it does serve as a great marker for those that do have it, as it distinguishes a specific male ancestor in the Holy Land. More notably, the CMH is found in Kohanim Jews across the world and across ethnic lines. It's been found in Eastern Europe and India alike. But very notably, the CMH is only found extremely rarely in Palestinian Arabs, which adds credence that it's mostly unique only to Jewish men. Which brings us back to the Lemba. In 2000, a wide-ranging genetic survey was conducted which included African Bantu, Yemeni Hadramaut, Yemeni Senna, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazic Jews, and the Lemba. The data showed contributions by both Bantu and Jews to the Lemba Y chromosome, and most interesting was the data on the Buba clan. The Buba clan are pointed at as the original leaders of the Lemba, the priests that led them to Yemen and settled in Senna. And guess what? The Buba men have the Kohen model haplotype, and at a staggeringly high percentage, 50%. They are not the only Lemba to have it, but it is most concentrated in their clan, and it is not found in their Bantu neighbors' DNA at all. This is beyond extraordinary. Africans living 5,000 miles away from the Holy Land are direct descendants of the Kohanim Jews. Their tradition claims it, their historians claim it, the lands claim it, and now even the blood agrees. A group of male Jews, exiled from their homes, sail across the sea and are made to wander the African landscapes for generations. It truly is a story of biblical proportions, and brings to mind the 40 years of exile in the desert that the ancient Israelites undertook. There are yet more trials that face the Lemba, however. The Lemba peoples of South Africa and Ethiopia have faced persecution from locals and colonizers alike, and the glory days of jewel crafting and precious metals are far behind them. As such, they have begun looking for a way back home to their lost Holy Land, through Israel. In 1950, Israel passed the Law of Return, which states that every Jew has the right to migrate to Israel as an immigrant. In 1977, the Beta Israelis, Jews living in Ethiopia, were able to prove their birthright as an ancient Jewish people and were allowed into Israel. Now the Lemba are hoping to receive the same treatment. This is where the greatest dispute lies. Despite their cultural similarities and the Y-DNA testing, the Lemba cannot prove that they are Jewish by the maternal line. According to Jewish law, one's status as a Jew can only be proven by an unbroken matrilineal line, or they must be converted into Judaism officially. The Lemba cannot prove a matrilineal line, and their oral traditions even explicitly state that their ancestors were a group of men only. This means that no matter how much their traditions match, the Lemba are not considered Jewish, and they never can be. The Lemba's only hope now is to be converted en masse by recognized Jews, something difficult to accomplish when you have a population of 70,000 split among multiple nations in remote villages. Thankfully, the Lemba are not entirely scorned. There are Jewish humanitarian groups going over to learn more about their lost tribesmen on a semi-regular basis, and as of 2015, the Lemba had constructed their very first synagogue. It seems that the Lemba are on their way to greater recognition, and hopefully a video such as this one will increase their support. The Lemba are an incredible people, and there is still a fog of mystery around them that is only partly beginning to lift. A comprehensive written account of their oral history, their locations of Senna 2 and 3 and the reasons for their abandonment, and the reason for the Lemba's original flight from Judea to Yemen are all still missing, but the information and evidence we do have is still astounding. I think it's safe to say that the Lemba have one of the most unique origin stories in history, and I wish their people nothing but the best in the future. Thanks for watching.